with Moses having led people away from Egypt through the wilderness, yet he himself not making it to the promised land, who would be the new leader now? Well, Joshua was the one whom God called to step forward. And today we look at Joshua and the challenges that he was to face and how God was with him in battle.
After Moses died, God made Joshua the new leader. He had to help God's people cross the River Jordan. Joshua told the men who carried the special box with God's laws inside to go first. When they stepped into the river, the water flowed away. Then everyone could walk to the other side.
Joshua was the new leader of God's people. Their enemies would not let them into the city of Jericho, but God showed Joshua a way. Joshua and the people marched around the walls of the city. They blew their horns and shouted. Then the big walls fell down. God's people went inside.
Five armies came to fight Joshua and God's people. Joshua's army was winning, but they needed more time. So Joshua prayed, "Let the sun stand still," and God stopped the sun right in the middle of the sky. It didn't go down for a long time. God's people won the battle.
God's great power had been demonstrated. Joshua had been able to lead God's people. And the next section of the Bible is often referred to as Judges. There's lots of different characters with different traits, some of them positive, some not so good. But we see how God used them in spite of their flaws. Let's just look at two of those characters now.
Thousands of men were waiting to fight the armies of God's people. God told Gideon that his army should be small. Gideon took all the men to the river. God said only the 300 men who drank from their hands could be in the army. Bravely, Gideon took only these men, and God helped them win the fight.
God made Samson very, very strong. He broke the ropes that tied him. He killed a lion with his bare hands. He knocked down a large building. It fell on many of God's enemies.
Joshua and Judges, we've seen examples of God's power, God's love for his people, God's forgiveness. Next up, we'll be looking at the lead up to King David. Things that happened before David was born, things that happened in his early life. And then we'll go on to look at the life of David. Varied and quite amazing. And once again we see God being at work in incredible ways.